Hi everyone, I'm here with Nick Kho. Thanks for joining me, Nick.
Yeah, I'm so glad you came down to interview.
Oh, thank you. Now, I've got my new book out, What Women Need.
It's a great book.
Thank you very much.
I read it yesterday and I was thinking about how similar the stuff that you teach in terms of dress, style, confidence, and especially the mindsets that people need to have in terms of the right energy, the positive energy, the vibes that people feel, apply to not just women but also for men.
Now tell me, you know what men need.
We created Real Social Dynamics, my business partner and I, in 2002, and we became the world's largest dating coaching company. I think that one of the things about us, though, is that we focus almost exclusively on teaching men the process of meeting women, as opposed to in the past where so many people write about what happens when you're in the relationship itself. We wanted to help guys who didn't know how to get into a relationship, to get into relationships they want, or to just have skills they could use for meeting girls, business, and other things. Because the practice of dating, I think, has had many parallels in business, and so I created a channel now and a business model for business education.
Fantastic. So ultimately, you would know what women need. You've been educating men on what they believe that a woman should need. So give me some of your top tips.
Well, I think that the most important thing that I think that women need is the social experimentation mindset, which is that if you look at a scientist, and a scientist has a bunch of chemicals, and he mixes the chemicals together, and there's an explosion, the scientist doesn't get upset or angry or, look at it and go, yay. The scientist has a hypothesis and a conclusion. And when the conclusion happens, and there's like an explosion, if you mix two wrong chemicals together, you get a result. And it's whether it's good or bad, the reference experience, the field experience is the learning lesson. And I think that if you come from that mindset, especially in the dating world, you're more likely to learn. And I think field experience is king. So I think the biggest thing that women need is to get the field experience of experimenting, trying new things, meeting new kinds of people, and putting yourself outside your comfort zone, because then you'll actually find things. I think that when people get into their rut, it's usually that if you keep doing the same thing, you get the same result. Field-tested results come from field-tested actions. So trying the new things is what I think really helps.
So based on my book, what do you believe are kind of the similarities as to what women would need and men need? Do you think that they actually deep down need the same thing, the qualities and the value system?
I think that when you get into a situation where people are focused on just money or just relationships or whatever that focus is, as opposed to your principles and your core, you kind of lose track of yourself. And as a result of that, I think that is super important from both your book and also my favorite book from Stephen Covey, who is a mentor of my father in the business world back in the day.
Oh, fantastic. Now tell me about your background. For anyone that doesn't know, how did this all happen? How did you start this incredible business?
Well, I came from a very intensive education background. My father was a university president of a university called DeVry, but it's a series of universities. So they're on the New York Stock Exchange. It's a multi-billion-dollar company. My mom was a kindergarten teacher. I grew up in the education environment, and my dad wasn't in the business world at first. He was just a professor, a computer science professor. And as a result of having education all day during the day and at night, I was studying. I didn't have a lot of socializing other than Boy Scouts, which is more education.
Absolutely.
Or going to the library. And so I'm now in a situation where I created a company, but I did it while I was in school. I've been in college now for 15 years. I'll be in college for the next 15 years. Did multiple MBA programs. I'm doing multiple law school programs. And I believe in continuing education as an entrepreneur. But because I didn't have a massive amount of experience socializing, like someone who's a typical student or a typical kid, I even went to a boarding school where I was in a work hard environment there too. When I got into college, I felt like I was free. And I wanted to learn about women and dating. I was a late bloomer. And in order to get into things, I found people on the internet. So back in the day, there was web-based, non-web-based internet. So I don't know, did you ever see that? Basically, it's all text. If you want to look up a search query, you have to type a computer code to search things.
Yes.
So I came from that nerdy environment, and I was looking at forums of people talking about dating advice. Now, most people were talking about dating advice from the stance of quite awkward things, like the super date. So it's like, wow, you should hide presents all across the city, and then you go to various venues, or give her flowers and buy her chocolate and be romantic. Very generic advice, but it's stuff that people oftentimes forget when they're in a relationship. But if you do that on a first date, you're gonna freak her out, and she's gonna think you're super weird. And super dates just don't attract girls. That's not how it works. So I think that I wanted to learn what is attraction. So we started learning about how to develop our identities, express our personality, convey the right message, and most importantly, the process of doing things that we never thought was possible. We call them mission impossibles. So I don't know, do you do like action movies? You ever seen the movie Mission Impossible?
Yes, yes.
So you see a guy who's out there trying to save the world.
Okay.
Yet he's doing things that you'd say, no, this is not possible in real life. So we decided to create things that we also thought were impossible missions that we call Mission Impossibles. But one example would be if we take a client out on a boot camp. It's a 3-day program where we take guys to, say, a city like Sydney, where you're from. So we would take someone to, say, a department store, like one of your luxury department stores, and there'd be escalators going from one floor to the next. And I would be out with a client, and I would tell the client, what I need you to do is I need you to approach the next person that go on the elevator or the escalator. Whether it's a guy or a girl, your goal is to get on the escalator at the same time as the other person. And by the time you get to the top of the escalator, that person wants to stop and continue talking to you. So the guy's like, that's impossible. How am I going to do that? You know, that escalator is so short. And I said, well, look, in the real world, if you're in a bar or a club, there's flashy music, there's drinks, there's entertainment. Or you see a beautiful girl walking down the street. The amount of time you'll have is the same time, about 30 seconds. You have 30 seconds to go from floor 1 to floor 2 up an escalator, but the only difference is you can see the time constraint. But that time constraint, where it's visual or not, exists no matter what. And
it's making a good first impression.
yeah, a hook, I would say even. So the first impression has to captivate them so much that you hook their interest so that they want to continue the conversation, developing curiosity, intrigue, finding those false time constraints that everyone has in their life to not waste opportunity of meeting someone that could add value to that person's life, whether it's a new relationship, a new idea, or of some kind. And so value doesn't have to come in so much of the form of what people talk about. I mean, know that you're coming from the mainstream media world. And I think that one of the things that I found to struggle with is that I've struggled with the fact that I've always liked the mainstream media, but there's messages from the mainstream media that I thought have been propagated wrongly. One is the power of money, celebrity, and good looks as the king elements of attraction and success in the real world for money. It's to the point where I've had people meet me and say, you know, it's so interesting to meet you because I thought you'd be much taller. You know? So I think that one of the things that we wanted to defy is that so many people have been ingrained from our client base into the beliefs that if you don't have money, you're not really good looking, and you're not famous, then beautiful women are not people that you could attract. So we wanted to kill that.
That's incorrect. You're right. It's completely incorrect.
I think that so many people have to realize that that's the one thing you can do, no matter who you are, is to convey who you are and meet new people. Whether it's a goal of walking up cold, doing what we call a cold approach and meeting a beautiful woman, or to do a cold approach and meeting someone for a business network that can change your entire money life. The process is the same. You have to overcome your fear, do the approach, and convey your personality.
Absolutely. Now, you're a friend of ours and your lovely wife Amber as well. And you recently got into a bit of controversy. Tell me about this and set it straight.
Yeah.
Set the story straight, because you are helping people. You're doing such a good thing. You're giving hope to a lot of men out there. You're teaching them skills and you're educating them.
We came to your country, Australia, and we had the biggest news catastrophe about 3 years ago in 2014, where Anonymous had edited some posts and some other YouTubers had edited videos and posted edited videos of ours that made it look like one of our guys was physically assaulting and advocating that people pay thousands of dollars to this guy to have him teach rape, where hundreds of thousands of men in 70 countries around the world, at thousands at a time, were paying thousands of dollars to meet in secret hotel rooms to secretly attack and rape people, as opposed to dating advice. And we had to, after 3 months of bomb threats and scares and this guy getting banned from countries and getting the badge of honor of being Time Magazine's most hated man in the world, you know, we were able to get him on CNN and finally clear the air, where he said, look, this is the exact opposite of what we teach. We've had many of our clients get successful marriages. We've had really wholesome things we teach about, confidence and what have you. He did create very crazy pranks, comedic pranks mixed with how to pick up girl videos, mixed with comedy, is what we call infotrainment. And I think that the comedy part and the entertainment part often gets mixed up with what we're actually teaching part of things. And so if we have our guys engage with pranks and comedy, you'll think, well, we're advocating that. So if you take someone's jokes, I remember one of the most interesting things out there was one of our most popular instructors is Owen Cook. We've had him on stage with the likes of Richard Branson and President Bill Clinton. And I remember Vice magazine wanted to create controversy in the media where he was on stage telling a joke about how he wanted this really unconfident kid to pretend like he was a lion walking through the jungle. And as the massive lion jumps on the female lion, he acts like he's humping the lion from behind. And anyway, Vice magazine quoted him, and he's telling a joke and everyone's laughing, but it quoted him and he's growling and stuff. He's Owen Cook advocates not just the rape of humans, but the rape of lions, as he growls and imitates how he is attacking the lion from behind. And they don't show the video, they quote it, and he's like growling. And it's funny, but it's also something that people actually believe, because I know that you know, there's always the joke about whether fake news is real or not. You know, sometimes it actually is fake.
There you go.
Yeah. I think that that actually turned into a Harvard thesis of mine for my master's thesis about how I believe technology and the laws of mainstream media haven't kept up to date. Because I believe that with social media, a public citizen is somebody like a social media influencer, a person from Anonymous, one random person, as opposed to a journalist who has laws of journalism in terms of credibility, what you can and cannot say, defamation, what have you. And so I'm really interested in studying that.
Absolutely. You know, well, what's next for you now? What's next for the company and for yourself personally?
So we've been focused so much in the last 15 years on building a dating company where we do 1,000-something programs a year in several hundred cities. And then we have a big social media following, and we want to utilize that same following to influence their lives, not just in the dating world. I think that so many people will look at their dating life experience, and I think that they will then say, okay, I'm done with that. I don't need to really improve or focus on my confidence, my communication skills, and what have you. And I think a lot of these skills could also be applied to parallel the business world. So my goal in 2018 is to replicate the masterminds that we've created for the dating world, where we have these 234 Facebook groups and people meet locally in these 234 cities, and have that replicated for business and also organize it locally here first, where I've developed a team of people that help grow us. So everyone needs mentors. You've had mentors, I've had mentors.
Absolutely.
So I've developed a team of mentors, and I developed them into a series of interviews. So on my YouTube channel, we've had 100 people we are interviewing, and a lot of these people have inspired my life personally and then touched me and have been a part of my soul circle. So I wanted to allow my students to learn how the skills that we teach in Real Social Dynamics can be applied to business and how it's inspired them equally how they've inspired me.
Absolutely, fantastic. And to finish off, if you had 5 top tips that you could share now with everybody, what would they be?
It's so funny that you asked that question because I have to say that that is probably the most popular question that we get from anyone from the mainstream journalism world.
Fantastic. Oh, there you go. Tick for the journalist.
Yeah. So the first thing that we talk about is how when you approach somebody and you have that belief that you're burning the boats, you're more likely to get the success. When we say burning the boats, where does that come from? So a lot of people look at, to say, the Viking days, and they'll see these crazy adventures. Now, when we look at the Viking days, we used to study how the Vikings used to light their boats on fire when they're going to attack their enemies. And the mindset was that there's no going back. There's no retreat as an option. There's only to fight and win, and if you fail, well, you went all out. So the first mindset that we talk about is when you're going for success in business, for dating, for anything you want in life, you have to burn the boats, have that kind of a closer mentality. The second thing that we like to talk about is about this kind of analogy, I would say. We call it the claw. Now, I talked about this with your future husband, Stephen Moss, earlier, but from a very different standpoint, because back in the day, I told him a story when he went to one of our seminars.
I didn't know he went to one of your seminars.
Oh, no, he was a guest. He wasn't a paying client.
Are you sure?
Yeah.
Are you sure?
Yeah, yeah, 'cause I had him there when it was in Australia. And we were talking about, we had a picture of a gremlin, okay? A gremlin, it was all green, and they have giant claws, right? So we had a client that was ugly, so ugly, he looked like a gremlin. He had been lit on fire while he was welding, because his profession was a welder. And as a result, his whole body was deformed, and he was walking up to girls on our boot camp, and girls would take a step back every time he walked towards them. And so our friend was walking up to a girl, and they're in a conversation. And the girl and him were, at first, he was a little nervous, and then he was making jokes, he was laughing, and he put his arm around her. Now, the girlfriend of this girl saw this, and saw this hideous guy. So she runs up to him, tried to save the friend away from this scary-looking guy. And so he starts talking to her, laughing to her, and what have you, and then he puts his arm around her. And then they spend the night laughing together, and they left the bar to do whatever afterwards. And I thought that was awesome, because this guy used what we called the claw. Now, the claw for us is that he put his arm around the girls, and also showed that he just had this confidence with his physical body language and his demeanor. But for us, the claw has a few rules. The first is the claw always wins. It's a mindset. So when you put your arm around the girl and what have you, you're doing it with confidence and swagger, and that you're doing it because you believe in yourself. And the second thing is the claw is a lifestyle, meaning that it's something that you have throughout your life, every day, all the time. And the third part of it is that the claw only gets stronger. So that as your interaction grows, no matter what happens, you're getting more reference experiences, things are happening in your life, and you're improving upon it. And your confidence grows, your actions, your physical body language, how you interact with the world, and your demeanor overall, all that improves, all that gets better, all that stronger. Now, the next thing I would like to talk about is that I used to teach boot camps myself. Now I'm just a businessman, so I'm behind the scenes, I'm happily married. But we used to do exercises about congruency. So when you're interacting with the world and you're on stage, there's one way you interact with people, how you present yourself. And there's another way you do it behind closed doors. Now, the same thing happens with everyone else. So what I used to do is an exercise. It's a box of crayons that I used to bring with everyone. I used to give everyone a giant easel of paper. I would tell people, I want you to draw two pictures. On one side, I want you to draw a picture with as much vivid color and imagery of how you think other people view you.
Ooh. That's right. Very interesting. It's all about perspective, isn't it?
It is. And so I had a guy draw this picture. But I mean, before I talked about his picture, let me talk about my picture. So I drew a picture of myself. And I think there's a picture of me in Hollywood, and I was in my 20s, and I was interacting with all sorts of people, and there's all these friends around. But then I also tell my clients, I want you to draw a picture of who you are deep down inside, the side of you that you believe is your true self, how you view yourself, your confidence, your belief system, as a projection and manifestation with images, objects. And so for my picture, I like to do an example so I could show that I'm doing exercise as well. I drew a picture of me staying at home, playing video games with my loved ones and what have you. Now, I had a client, and he was a son of a really rich guy, a multi-millionaire who had a big oil company, and he was inheriting the company. Tall, good-looking guy, and it was really interesting to see his picture. I asked him to draw the picture of how he saw himself deep down inside, and he drew a cave on an island with a dead dragon surrounded by spikes of human heads,
Wow.
with vultures in the sky and the waters filled with sharks. And I guess when I showed him my picture before I had an explanation of his picture, I told him what you need to do is bridge the congruency gap of how you see yourself and how other people sees you. Project who you are to other people. So when his image showed this image, he said to me, how will any girl find this attractive? How can I project how I feel about myself, my pain, my anguish, my vision of myself, and people will love that? I said, well, there's many people that have proven that actually works. If you look at a rock star like, say, Trent Reznor and Nine Inch Nails, or a heavy metal artist, or an angry rapper like Eminem, they'll project their hatred, but it's not the projection itself. It's how they project it. It's using what we call rhythm. The rhythm is the energy, the high vibrations, low vibrations.
So it's a form of communication, ultimately.
And if you communicate your true self in the right way, it's energy. I got asked once by a Emmy Award-winning celebrity actor, do you need game to actually get success in dating? I think that was a trick question from somebody, because that actor was with BBC, who really didn't like us, and BBC had banned us during that scandal, a media scandal, saying that we were a global rape organization. So why you need game to get girls? It was from that standpoint. And I thought that was a really interesting question to me, because how they're using game is like a manipulation. It reminded me of when Russell Simmons, I went to Summit Series with him, and he was asked, tell me your groupie story. He goes, well, what's a groupie? Is a groupie a girl that is inspired by your music, loves passionately following you as a fan? So I said, what is game? Is it the idea of expressing who you are and conveying it with the right rhythm and energy so that other people are led by your interaction and inspired by it? So I think that by defining what we're trying to teach people in the right way and seeing what that is interesting, because I think that people don't realize that what we're trying to develop would be socially conscious pickup artists.
Okay.
I guess a couple other points I could also make, because we're on a roll here. I would say that there was an instructor of mine who also inspired me, that I like to talk about a lot. I used to do this a lot in seminars. And he's kind of like our secret instructor. He's like a millionaire businessman, very successful. And one of the things that I learned from this guy was something that I learned also from HSBC. So HSBC, I was traveling around the world. I went to 110 countries.
Wow.
And one of the most frequent things I saw on those airplane ramps from the boarding gate to the airplane was you see these signs of HSBC. You might see a picture of, a river, right? And it would say beauty. Another person would see in the same river, and it would say boring or something like that. Or you see a picture of a stuffed animal, and you would say cuddly. Same stuffed animal, it's like a weird looking stuffed animal, like an elephant with pink and orange, green. Said creepy. So I guess I would say is, the thing I learned most about that was how you see the world isn't how everyone else sees the world. It's all about the frame you develop, and everything it's framed in one way could be reframed in a totally different way. So the perspective of things, and that's super applicable to dating and pickup and relationships, because how someone sees a bad reaction or a good reaction can be framed in different ways. A good reaction can be framed as bad. A bad reaction can be framed from a learning lesson. And you gotta focus on the frames that will help you to accomplish your goal.
That's very interesting. And I think that can also be applied to anything in life, really, is perspective and how people see themselves and how they see others. And the way that they will see it is based on their experiences in life.
Absolutely.
I guess. And so, therefore, that's really just a common topic for everybody, and something that every single person can gain, both men and women. Mm-hmm. Now, to finish up, tell me about the book that took you to success. The game.
Well, it's funny that you mentioned that book, because the purpose and intention of that book was that we had an author that sold millions of copies of this book, talking about how we lived in a house together and we built this company, Real Social Dynamics. And it became successful. And his goal was, he was one of our instructors who was saying that he was an undercover journalist for the New York Times. And his goal was to pretend that he went to pick up, found all this evilness in the pickup world, and then walked away with the love of his life. The truth of the story was that he tried to frame us as this villainous organization. And that at the end of it, he found his beautiful girl that he caught cheating on. She stayed with him in the public and the media just so that they could pretend to be together, who ended up hating him but wanted the publicity. And then he created a competing company against our company.
Wow. Not many people know that,
Yeah.
Nick.
But the cool thing about it was that we're the only company mentioned in the book that is a pickup artist-based company, still in business today. And as a result, all the millions of people that have followed us led to making us make more money from that book than he could have.
Now, your nickname is Papa, is
That's
that right? So you're featured throughout the book quite heavily as well.
Yeah, so I'm one of the pioneers who created this whole industry. And I was called Papa not because it sounds like, yeah, I'm the father of this movement. Yeah. I was Papa rather that it was based on the fact that I used to be in the party world in college. I used to throw crazy parties. I thought that was the way to get girls to like me, like have popularity. But it was because I had a fake ID that said Chevy Chase Las Vegas Vacation. Or no, it said my name, but my name is Nick, and it was inspired by Chevy Chase Las Vegas Vacation because there's a character in it named Nick Papa Giorgio. And Nick Papa Giorgio was a guy who, in this movie that had a fake ID, and he went to Las Vegas and had crazy parties. He developed his friends that way. But the one thing that I think that I guess I would end with is the fact that in order to really get a lot of friends and get success and find those people that you love and care about the most, you have to go on a journey and accomplish those things that you don't think are possible. I was at a charity gala for Virgin Unite with Richard Branson. I won this silent auction. Actually, it wasn't a silent auction. It was actually a live auction where you bid. And it was at dinner. And it was for a fighter plane experience. We're going to fly Italian Marchetti fighter planes. Wow. So I had very minimal flying experience from when I was in the Air Force and the Civil Air Patrol. And it wasn't a lot. But one thing I could do is I learned how to fly around while I was in the air. So what happened is that you go to a fighter plane school where they talk about all these loop-de-loops and rules and how to avoid getting shot and what have you. And it's about an hour-long training. And you don't even know how to fly a fighter plane. So it's all over your head. And then they say, okay, are you ready to go? I said, okay, let's go. So the guy takes off. And he says, oh yeah, there's another plane taking off with you. We're going to shoot it down. So I'm thinking, okay, this guy's an Air Force pilot. So we're going to attack, and it's going to be an interesting fight. We're shooting at each other. If you shoot the other plane, smoke comes out. So he lets go of the steering wheel. He says, okay, go at it. I said, what are you talking about? He says, well, I've been preaching for the last hour about all the things that you need to do.
Did you take your wife, Amber, with you? Because she loves...
Oh, this is before I met her.
Oh, this is before Amber.
It was awesome because she's a race car driver.
She loves it.
Yeah. So he actually told me he wasn't joking. Okay. And so he said, just move the steering wheel forward. So I move it, I'm diving.
Oh, gosh.
Super fast. Then I move it back.
Oh, my.
And he said, okay, move to the left. Now I'm just rolling. Now I'm moving to the right. Now I'm doing barrel rolls. He said, oh, shoot. And I shot the other plane and smoke came out. And then we landed the plane. So I think that one of the things about this that I wanted to say is that sometimes you're in a place in life where you just got to put yourself out there and just do those things that you want to do, even if you don't think it's possible. And you'll be surprised how often you'll have the support you need and the resources you need to get success in your life.
Wow, that's fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing everything that you have. Really appreciate it.
Awesome. Cheers.
Thank you.